Gang mom Mary Thompson, the mother of the young Oregon-based 74 Hoover Crips out of Eugene, Oregon, a woman who served on an anti-gang task force, actually organized a gang and sent 2 members to commit Eugene's first gang murder. 3 weeks before the shooting, the 2 were hanging out together when they encountered another group of teens, one of whom had history with Flynn. An altercation ensued and Flynn pulled a knife on the other teen, cutting him and landing both himself and Aaron in jail. If Aaron were to tell the police what he'd seen, Bo would surely be sent back to jail. And Thompson, having fought so ruthlessly for her son's release, would not stand for that. Aaron, the oldest of 5 children, was known to be kind and gentle, someone who often looked after his younger siblings while his mother worked 2 jobs to support the family. He was also an aspiring artist and an activist who spoke out often against gang violence in his community. He didn't have any enemies that anyone knew of. He was the protector. He watched out for everybody. On the morning of October 3rd, 1994, a hysterical mother called 911 to report that her son had been gravely injured and was bleeding from the head. Upon their arrival, first responders found 18-year-old Aaron Itura injured in bed but still breathing. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital while officers began their investigation into the shooting. Authorities quickly determined that someone had used a .38 caliber gun to shoot Aaron in the head, but although they were able to recover a piece of the bullet, the gun itself was nowhere to be found. There were no signs of a break-in and nothing of value had been taken. Plus, Aaron had been shot in the head, but he wasn't alone in bed at the time of the shooting. A girl he'd been seeing had been sharing the bed with him at the time but was unharmed, setting off alarm bells for investigators. Police began their interviews with Aaron's mother, Aaron Itura, who explained that Aaron had gone into his room the night before with his girlfriend. It wasn't until 1:30 a.m. that anything out of the ordinary happened. She heard screaming coming from Aaron's room, and when she rushed there, she found him bleeding from an apparent gash to the head as his girlfriend was freaking out. After a night in the hospital, Aaron, whose scans showed no brain activity, was taken off of life support. The police investigation into his shooting officially turned into a homicide case, and police spoke to his girlfriend. After testing her hands for gunpowder residue, they were able to rule her out as a suspect, and she began recounting what happened before Aaron was shot. She recalled that an unknown woman had called the house to ask if Aaron was home, and after receiving a yes, promptly hung up. She then described the shooting in more detail. She woke up after hearing a gunshot and believed that she saw 2 males with their faces covered with bandanas. 2 days after Aaron's shooting, the completed autopsy revealed Aaron had died from a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. The community was desperate for answers, and Aaron's mother was left to grieve the sudden death of her son. However, police soon came across new information that shed light on an unexpected relationship in Aaron's life. Police began to dig into the anti-gang activism that Aaron was doing, suspecting that he'd maybe made some dangerous enemies that way. They found that he'd been working often with another local activist named Mary Thompson, a mother known for speaking out about the harm gangs had done to her family and the community. 2 days after Aaron's shooting, the completed autopsy revealed Aaron had died from a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. The community was desperate for answers, and Aaron's mother was left to grieve the sudden death of her son. However, police soon came across new information that shed light on an unexpected relationship in Aaron's life. Back to the night that Aaron and Bo had an altercation where Bo whipped out a knife. Aaron decided to testify against Flynn in the case, which could potentially land Flynn a 4-year sentence behind bars. Because Aaron was due to testify mere days before he was killed, police began to wonder if Flynn had something to do with Aaron's death and went to visit him in the juvenile detention center where he was being held in connection to the assault case. Flynn maintained his innocence, and because police had no evidence suggesting otherwise, they were forced to look elsewhere for suspects. With Aaron planning to testify, 274 Hoover Crip gang members, Joe Brown, James Jim Elstead, Lisa Fentress, and Angel, set up the murder of Aaron Itura. What happened next was Lisa Fentress calls the house and asks Aaron's sister for Aaron, but after being told Aaron was home, the caller hung up. After a while, Aaron and his girlfriend head to bed in the makeshift bedroom by the garage. Later that morning, Joe Brown stood in front of the Itura home. Brown was a short kid who, at 5'6", weighed all of 140 pounds soaking wet. Dressed in black shirt and pants, with jet black hair, scraggly mustache, and goatee, he cased the joint. Quickly, he realized he had come too early. The house was lit up. People inside were still awake. He left and returned around midnight. This time, the house was dark. He tapped the glass of the living room window several times just to be sure. When no one answered, he walked back to the far end of the alley where Jim Elstad crouched in the darkness. Itura's asleep, he whispered. Elstad nodded and followed Brown back to the house. Both boys were dressed in the gang colors, blue bandanas over their faces and heads, blue bandanas covering their hands. Their gang leader had told Elstad and Brown that the open display of their gang colors was a symbol that someone was going to get killed. This was ritualized behavior. Dressing in this manner signified this as a Crip event, a Crip killing. Their gang leader had assured them that their brother Crips in Portland and Los Angeles would soon know about their work. They lifted the door of the garage and found themselves standing before a bedroom that had been partitioned off by sheetrock in the rear. Brown pushed at the door of the makeshift room. Clothes, beer bottles, soda cans, and empty pizza boxes were strewn all over the floor. On a small dresser made of cheap pressed wood were various types of shaving lotion and high school loose leaf binders filled to bursting. There was also an old console color TV set. Two of the walls were decorated with posters celebrating Motley Crue, Menace to Society, and Budweiser beer. There were pictures of two attractive young women dressed in low-cut outfits revealing their cleavage. The two other walls of the bedroom were covered in graffiti. And there on the bed was the target, Aaron Itura, sleeping arm in arm with his girlfriend Carrie Barkley. Brown shook Aaron's bare back. The teenager continued to slumber, but then Brown saw Itura move his head a little bit and start to get up. By then, Jim Elstad was at the door, holding a .45 caliber Smith and Wesson revolver in his right hand. Steadying it with his left, Elstad raised the weapon. Brown reached down to the girl's purse, which sat on the floor amid the litter of the beer bottles and pizza cartons. He reached in and took out a pack of cigarettes, which he pocketed, then stood up and to the side. A neat red hole had materialized in the back of Aaron Itura's head. Itura slumped back down, the mattress suddenly turning a dark red. Harry came awake instantly and screamed, "Help me, somebody come and help me." Elstad and Brown turned and ran. Soon they were back on the street and Elstad turned to Brown. During the course of their investigation, investigators caught wind of two teens, Jim Elstad and Joseph Brown, bragging about being involved in Aaron's murder. Elstad and Brown were known to spend a lot of time at Thompson's house, and Thompson often took in kids who were involved in violent lifestyles. But before police could seek out Elstad and Brown for an interview, Thompson reached out to police to say that not only had she heard the two boys were involved in Aaron's death, they actually came to her house the morning after the murder, seeking refuge. She admitted to keeping that bit of information from police, but claimed she'd done so because she hadn't believed them at the time. Elstad and Brown were called in for a police interview. While they initially maintained their innocence, they also failed their polygraph tests. Hours later, the pair both confessed. Brown was the lookout, while Elstad was the one who pulled the trigger. They said they'd done because they were angry with Aaron for agreeing to testify against Flynn. They explained they threw the gun into a river afterward, and police were able to track it down. Elstad and Brown were arrested in October, and it seemed like the case was coming to a close. However, things took a strange turn after Aaron's mother received a call from Thompson, who was close to the family and had been supporting them during this time. During that phone call, Thompson told Janice that Aaron would never have been killed if he had just kept his mouth shut. Janice thought to herself, did I just hear her say what I think I heard her say? Janice reported the strange statement to police, who already had their suspicions about Mary Thompson. They called her back in for questioning, intending to find out why she'd kept valuable information from them early in the investigation. But although Thompson admitted to being angry at Aaron for working with prosecutors, police had no evidence against her and were forced to let her go. Still, they were not convinced of her innocence and began to dig more deeply into her past. They discovered that she had a troubled history. She'd been involved in criminal pursuits that included selling methamphetamine while she was actually working as an assistant to those prosecuting drug dealers. Police, suspecting Thompson may have actually been the one to orchestrate Aaron's murder, began listening into Flynn's conversations in the hopes of getting more info. While they initially believed Flynn was the gang leader, it quickly became clear it was actually his mother who'd been calling all the shots, orchestrating various crimes with practiced ease. Even more shockingly, during another conversation among gang members, Thompson referenced having arranged Aaron's murder while threatening someone else. They realized Thompson was actually a hardened criminal rather than the concerned mother and community activist so many had believed she was. They arrested the gang members, hoping at least one of them would be willing to turn against Thompson, and they got their wish. In exchange for immunity, one gang member, Lisa, spilled everything that she knew about Thompson, claiming that it was Thompson who'd influenced the boys to kill Aaron in order to protect her son. Mary Thompson was absolutely a master manipulator. That was demonstrated many times, Skelton said. Thompson was charged with aggravated homicide in February 1995. After pleading guilty to Aaron's murder, Brown was sentenced to 10 years, while Elstead got 16 years. But Thompson, who pleaded not guilty, was convicted in 1996 and sentenced to life in prison. A legal loophole saw her sentence reduced, however, and she was released in the summer of 2019 after serving 23 years.
The jury finds 41-year-old Mary Thompson guilty for her role in the murder of Aaron Itura.
It's been such an emotional trauma on us all. It's not only me that she's hurt, it's not only my son that she's destroyed, it's my family, his friends, the kids involved.